I never planned on leaving the service. Not the Marines, not the Vatican unit that came after. Men like me don't retire. We fade into unnamed missions and stop writing home. That was supposed to be my ending. But plans on paper don't care about real air and real blood. I'm still alive. I'm out. Silence is worse. My name is Michael Heron. I was trained to follow orders, not to tell stories. But if I don't set this down, it'll rot me from the inside. The unit didn't have a name we could say aloud. We flew on regular flights, carried ordinary bags, and looked like quiet tourists. Blend in, our handler used to say. Don't get clever. I'll tell this the way it happened. No sermon, no drama, just the steady sound of a man trying to breathe. I landed in Rome before sunrise, body clock wrecked, tongue dry with airplane coffee. A driver argued with a cop. Their voices cut the morning like knives. I kept my head down and walked. The city smelled like wet stone and diesel. The sun came up pale. At the Vatican gate, a guard checked a card that looked boring on purpose and waved me through. Marble swallowed my steps. The air inside was colder than out. I passed a glass case with a cracked chalice. The placard said, "Replica." It didn't look like one. A young custodian glanced at me and said, "Don't touch the glass, signore." I nodded and moved on. My room in the guest house had a narrow bed, a desk, and a crucifix above the headboard. The blanket smelled like old soap. Pipes clicked in the walls. I tried to pray and couldn't. The words felt like they belonged to a cleaner mouth. I slept 20 minutes. When I woke, my tongue tasted like copper and my jaw ached from grinding. Downstairs, Father Darius Moretti waited in a coat that fit like armor. He nodded once. Sister Helena Ward sat at a long table with a map and a stack of photocopies weighed down by a small stone. Jonas Richter leaned in a corner, chewing a mint like it was gristle. "You look like you fought the plane," Jonas said without smiling. "The plane won," I said. "It always does." We ate in silence. Bread, eggs, coffee that burned the tongue. Darius read while we chewed. The target sat in an old mining valley. The town was called Seraphis on the oldest maps and nothing at all on newer ones. One chapel still stood. No parish, no caretaker. Reports said hikers heard bells at night and saw light under the floor. A monastery nearby refused to speak. That line in the brief was underlined twice. Helena tapped the map. "Prevailing wind shifts at sunset," she said. Jonas grunted. "Good for smoke, bad for nerves." In the afternoon, I ran checks. I broke down and cleaned my handgun. I counted tourniquets, batteries, and evidence bags. I taped a small LED to a pry bar so I could look under things without getting my face close. I wrote notes in a pocket notebook. Time, place, air, smell. These are anchors. Men who work in rooms with bad air need anchors. I spoke the list under my breath like a drill. Gloves, tape, cutters, chalk, markers. A porter walked by and asked, "Inspection?" I said, "Just keeping honest." Back in my room, I sat on the bed and counted breaths. 10 slow in, 10 slow out. The baseboard heat hummed. Laundry soap clung to the curtains with a bitter lemon edge. Light on the wall was thin and gray. That's when I saw the cross above the headboard. It was upside down. I'd looked at it before I lay down. It was straight then. The nail had left a rust stain like a tear. Now the top pointed to the floor. "Stay where you are," I said to the wood, as if it could listen. I stood on the bed and fixed it, pressed the nail deeper, wiped the rust with my sleeve. It stayed straight. I left for a shower. 6 minutes later, it was upside down again. I checked the window, the door, the nail. The plaster was dry. The wood was heavy for its size. I turned the cross upright, set a pencil across the top to mark the level, and watched. The pencil didn't roll. I left the room. When I came back, the cross was upside down and the pencil lay on the floor as if it had hopped there on purpose. I whispered, "Not funny." I didn't tell Darius, not then. Bring a priest your small wrongness and he'll thank you, nod, write a note, and point at the schedule. He's not wrong. Schedules keep people alive. But small wrongness is the first crack in a dam. Water talks before it breaks stone. That evening we ate pasta with meat sauce in the basement canteen. The sauce tasted like iron. Jonas forked a bite and said, "This coffee could strip paint." Helena didn't look up. "It's enough to keep you awake," she said. Darius recited a psalm from memory with no flourish, like a man reading a checklist. The lights flickered once. No one looked up. I asked, "Anyone hear bells last night?" Helena. "Not last night." Jonas shook his head. "Plain noise in my skull." At 11 p.m. I walked the outer corridor alone. The marble held an old chill. One tile squeaked near a statue with a broken hand. I timed my steps and failed. On the stairs, the candles went dark as I climbed one by one without smoke. I stood still. Every wick lit again at once. The air tasted stale, like a room that had held breath too long. I said, "All right," to no one, and kept moving. At midnight I lay awake and listened for bells. I heard none. In the morning, over black coffee and dry toast, Helena said, "I heard 3 bells at midnight." Jonas said, "I heard them too, but the rhythm was wrong, like the metal inside the bronze turned sideways." Darius set his cup down. "Don't chase a sound," he said. His hand shook when he lifted the cup again. That was enough for me. We left for the valley after lunch in a van with shocks and a heater that clicked. The road into Seraphis cut through red hills. Old rail lines scarred the dirt. No birds, no dogs, no trash. Just wind chewing the signs until the letters looked tired. Jonas checked his rifle twice. "Insurance," he said. Helena held a leather prayer book and traced the spine with one finger. I asked, "You expect to use it?" She said, "Only if words still work." Darius watched the sky and murmured, "They always do until they don't." The town opened like a mouth without teeth. Roofs had caved in. Windows had no glass. We stopped where the asphalt heaved like something under it wanted out. The chapel sat dead center, squat and black, the bell tower cut off at the top. Someone had wrapped iron chain through the door handles. When I leaned close, my breath fogged, then hung in the hole as if it didn't know where to go. Jonas said, "Feels like a freezer with the door open." We set a small table in the square and checked comms, backups, and lights. A coat of fine dust sat on every stone and stuck to sweat like talc. The air smelled like wet ash. I wrote the smell on my pad and underlined it twice. "Smell tells the truth first," I said. Helena nodded. "Your nose panics before your eyes." Darius gathered us by the door and spoke the rules. His voice was low enough that I had to lean in to hear every word. He didn't read from paper. He didn't need to. He'd learned them the way a diver learns the steps to clear a mask. "Repeat it back," he said, out loud. Rule 1, do not read the words carved on the walls. Not allowed, not even a whisper. We repeated it. Rule 2, do not touch the relic. No matter what it promises, we repeated it. Rule 3, do not look directly at the watcher if it appears, not even for a second. Jonas muttered, "What if it looks first?" Darius didn't smile. "Then you look at the floor." Rule 4, leave before the 3rd bell of night. We repeated it. He made us say our names. "Jonas," he said, tapping his chest. "Helena," she said. "Michael," I said. Darius lifted the bolt cutter. "Ready?" The chain on the doors rattled, though no one had touched it. We all heard it. No one mentioned it. The wind shifted, cold and narrow, like it had come through a keyhole. I smelled iron and something sweet, like burnt orange, the same cheap cologne from the plane. Except there was no one in that square but us. Helena flinched. "Do you smell that?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. Jonas rolled his shoulders. "Rot in a fruit bowl." Darius raised a hand as if to bless us, then let it fall. "Stay on count," he said. "No improvising." We waited. The square clicked and ticked as heat left the stones. A moth circled a dead street lamp like it was drunk. I could hear my breath inside my hood. I could hear the tiny rasp of fabric each time I turned my head. The chain lifted once and settled, links kissing metal. Jonas whispered, "It wants out," I said. "Or wants in. I'm trying to be faithful to the order of events. Part of me wants to jump ahead and tell you how the floor sounded later when the first board broke, or how the air in the nave felt wet like a mouth. But this is only the opening and the first wrongness. It's enough to say we cut the chain with a bolt cutter. We stepped inside on a count of 3. And the light from our lamps didn't travel as far as it should have. The beam whitened dust and then fell short and soft like the air had weight. One more thing before that threshold closes behind us in this telling. On the stone beside the door, someone had scratched 4 short lines with a nail. Not words, just tally marks, fresh. The dust around the scratches was still loose. I brushed it with a knuckle. Underneath, the stone was warm. Darius saw me looking. "Don't read it," he said. "I'm not," I answered. "Good," he said. "Then let's go." The bolt cutter snapped the chain, and the sound echoed longer than it should have. We stepped into the chapel on a count of 3. My lamp beam hit dust and then went soft as if the air had weight. I tasted iron. My boots sank in a layer of ash that clung like wet powder. The nave was empty at first glance. Rows of pews had collapsed into splinters. The altar had no cloth. The stone floor was cracked, edges raised like plates from an earthquake. Every sound was wrong. A whisper turned into a shout. A cough felt like thunder. Even our breathing came back too loud. "Don't talk," Jonas muttered, though no one was speaking. Darius held up one hand for silence. He didn't need to. None of us wanted to speak. He led us forward. We reached the front steps of the altar. Carved into the wall above it were words in a language I did not know. Helena pulled her scarf over her mouth and shook her head. Rule 1. Do not read the walls. She mouthed it without sound. I nodded. "Not a word," Darius said, voice sharp. In the left aisle, a statue of Mary stood without a face. The stone had been scraped flat. Her hands were still open, but the offering bowl between them was black with scorch marks. A moth circled the rim, wings singed. I raised my light higher, and the moth vanished mid-air. "Gone," I whispered, but no one answered. Jonas whispered a curse. Darius shot him a look. "Keep it in," he said. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I tasted ash and candle wax, though no candles burned. Helena reached toward a page half buried in dust. Darius caught her wrist before her fingers touched. He shook his head slow. Rule 2. She mouthed sorry and tucked her hand under her cloak. We kept moving. At the back of the chapel, a stair led down. The railing was iron, rusted to powder. My glove left a red smear on the wall. We went single file. The air dropped 10 degrees. I saw my breath and heard water drip slow from stone. "It's colder here," Helena whispered. Jonas replied, "Like a cellar full of graves." The basement was not a basement, it was a crypt. Rows of alcoves lined the walls, each with bones stacked in towers. Some skulls had nails driven through the eye sockets. Some ribs had words etched into them. Helena kept her eyes down. Jonas swore under his breath. Darius only said one word. Forward. We reached a door of heavy oak bound in iron. No lock. Only a ring handle worn smooth by hands long gone. Darius looked at each of us once. Then he pulled. The hinges screamed but gave. Inside, a single reliquary sat on a pedestal of black stone, a wooden box bound in brass, symbols burned into the lid. The air around it shimmered like heat above asphalt. Rule 2. Do not touch. Darius whispered it, though no one had moved. He began to read the notes in his hand, not scripture, instructions. His voice shook once. Helena lit a candle and set it on the ground. The flame bent sideways and stayed that way. My ears popped. The room pressed in. The brass bands on the box rattled. Jonas stepped back and drew his weapon. "Not liking this," he said. Darius raised his hand. "Hold your ground." The sound stopped. Then came the first twist. A shadow fell across us, but there was no source. Our lamp still burned. The candle still leaned. Yet a mass of dark moved across the walls like liquid. It passed behind the reliquary and climbed the ceiling. When it reached the corner, the bones rattled. Helena dropped her book. "No echo," she whispered, shaken. Darius ordered us back, voice low but sharp. "Step away." We obeyed, backs tight against bone. The shadow slid down toward us. I kept my eyes low. Rule 3. Do not look. Jonas cursed and aimed. "I'm not dying. Quiet," he hissed. The shadow stretched like tar. He fired. The muzzle flash was white and soundless. The bullet did not hit wall or stone. It hung for a heartbeat, then fell flat. Helena screamed without sound. I pushed her face down. "Stay down," I whispered. Darius whispered a prayer, not for blessing but for strength. His words felt thick. The reliquary box shook hard enough to ring its brass. The candle went out. Darkness closed and then opened again. The shadow was gone. The box sat still. Darius turned to us. His face looked carved. His eyes were wet. He said only one thing. "Out!" We left the chamber fast, up the stairs, past the bones, through the nave, but the wrongness had followed. When we stepped back into the night square, the air was heavier. The dust on the stones moved in patterns like breath. The moth from before lay crushed on the doorframe. Darius set the bolt cutter down. "We go back tomorrow at dusk," he said. His tone was final. No one argued. That night I did not sleep. In the guest house I sat on the bed with my back to the wall. The crucifix above me had not moved, but the pencil I had set on the desk rolled in circles by itself. Its staying straight felt worse than when it shifted. "Keep moving, then stop. Keep moving, then stop," I muttered. I watched until morning. Helena came at dawn. She looked gray. She said, "I dreamed of the shadow. In the dream it wore a mask with no eye holes." She asked, "Did you dream too?" I told her, no. That was a lie. In mine the reliquary was open, and the watcher stood at the gate. We returned to the chapel at dusk. The air was colder. Frost rimed the stones. The chains we had cut were back. Links melted as if grown. Jonas spat. "It doesn't want us out." He raised the cutter. The metal snapped louder than before. We entered with lamps high. The pews we had passed were different. They were upright. The altar had a cloth again, crimson and damp. Words carved on the wall glowed faint red. Rule 1. Do not read. I looked down fast. My chest felt tight. Helena whispered to herself. Jonas cursed. Darius pushed us forward. "Do not stop," he said. At the stairwell, the air pressed like water. Our lamps dimmed, but did not die. We descended one by one. The iron railing was whole now, no rust. My glove squeaked on it. "Yesterday it crumbled," I muttered. Now it was smooth. In the crypt, the bones were gone. The alcoves were empty. The reliquary room door stood wide. Inside, the box waited. The brass bands had snapped. The lid was open a finger width. From the gap, a red light pulsed, slow as a heartbeat. The walls seemed to breathe. Helena froze. Darius put his hand on her shoulder. His fingers shook. Jonas raised his rifle. "Don't," I whispered. "Rule 2, don't touch." He nodded, but kept the gun trained. My mouth filled with copper. My skin crawled, and then the second twist came. A voice spoke from the reliquary, not sound, a shape of thought in my skull. It said my name, not the one on my passport, the one I had buried years ago. It promised silence. It promised release. It said it had been waiting. My knees bent. Darius grabbed me and pulled me back. His breath hissed. The candle Helena held burst into red flame. She gasped. It knows us. The reliquary lid lifted a fraction more. The pulse quickened. The room narrowed. The voice in my head grew louder. Not words now, but pressure. Jonas screamed, "Enough!" He fired again. The sound was thunder. The bullet hit the lid and flattened. The box shuddered. The walls cracked. Dust rained down, and then everything stopped. The lid dropped shut. The light died. The flame vanished. Silence rang. I fell to my knees. Helena sobbed once. Darius leaned against the wall, lips moving in silent prayer. Jonas pressed his back to the stone, sweat dripping. We left without a word. Outside, the square was empty. The dust had settled. The moth was gone. The sky above Seraphis was black, though the clock said evening. I knew the mission was not over. I knew the rules had shifted. Normal had ruptured beyond repair. As we walked away from the chapel that second night, the silence pressed on my skin like a weight. My lamp flickered even in open air. Every step left a deeper print in the dust than it should have. I could not shake the feeling that the square itself was breathing with us, inhaling when we inhaled, exhaling when we stopped. I did not leave after that second night, because men like me do not walk away when the hinge begins to scream. We try again. At noon, he called a meeting in a peeling cellar room. He set a folder down. "This is the part we were not meant to see," he said. "Most operatives hold the light and never read the inventory." Today we read it. Inside were photographs of objects stored below ground in places with no public door. A lamb statue green with age. A mirror covered in pitch. A jar stoppered with wax and bound in wire. Beside each photo was a card with a number and 2 words, "Do not." Darius told us about the warehouse under Rome and others like it. "The guards don't keep people out," he said. "They keep sound in." Far underground, a hall of black iron shelves holds boxes like Seraphis. None are empty. I asked who wrote the rules. He said, "We did not. We only keep them. Each time a rule breaks, the ledger adds a name." He slid the folder to me. The last page held a long list of dates. I stopped reading. Helena listened. Jonas stared. "Same old nightmare," he muttered. I drank water and tasted nothing but metal in my mouth that was not there. We would return at nightfall. Darius looked at each of us, tired. We prepped for hours, batteries, lamps, chalk, tape. I cut strips of cloth for blindfolds. We rehearsed the walk in the dark, the turn, the door, the step count. Boot steps did not match feet. At dusk, the wind came down. It rasped the face and stung the eyes. The chain was back, fused. The bolt cutter snapped and hit stone. "Again!" Jonas spat. We stepped in on 3. The pews were broken again. The altar was bare again. It was as if the place reset itself between visits. Tallies at the door were 5. We moved to the stair. Cold rose up. The crypt was as before, empty alcoves, open door, the pedestal box, no bones, no nails. Dust hung as if fixed to air. I felt it anyway, a held breath in stone that wished to be lungs. Darius nodded to Helena. She carried watchmaker tools, small tools. She tied a cloth over her eyes, not in the plan. She trusted hands more than sight. "Count for me," she said. I counted 1 to 10, 10 to 1. The rhythm kept my throat from closing. She brushed the brass band in tiny strokes, listening. The band sang soft, a thin wire in cold wind. She shifted. The note fell. She held it. "Almost," Helena whispered, and touched a second band. 2 notes made a third that beat the air. The room bent. Our lamps shook. Dust rose in sheets like a slow wave. Then the bands went silent. The box settled. Helena slid back, blindfold still on. Her hands shook a little. "It's stable," she said. Darius lifted linen from his kit to wrap the box. He paused. The pause was long enough to change me. The lid moved, a finger width, then two. No light, no sound, just the lid. The linen fell from his hand. Helena tore off the blindfold and froze. Jonas raised the rifle but did not fire. I stepped toward the pedestal and stopped. "It breathes," I whispered. The box breathed. Something stood behind us. I did not turn. Cold drew a line across my back. A scrape slid behind my ear. It moved through my skull. I kept my eyes on the lid. Rule 3. Do not look. My eyes watered. My body begged to turn. At first, it did not use words. It used pressure. It pressed meaning into my head until I knew. You have been heard. It followed you since the first night when the wicks relit. The cross had not moved. It had been held down. The lid lifted more. The air tasted metallic. Then words came. It called me by a name only one person had used long ago, before the core. My knees went weak. Helena gripped my sleeve. "Don't listen," she whispered. Darius stepped in and raised a hand to stop me. "Let me out, and I will return what was taken." It would give me back a day I had lost. I do not bargain in rooms like this, but my bones leaned toward the lid like iron to a field. Jonas moved. He circled toward the rear, muzzle low. He mouthed a count. 3, 2, 1. The cold behind me shifted to him. He froze. He almost looked. The box answered. The lid jumped. The brass bands rang once like struck forks. A seam opened along the back edge, and a breath came out that was not air. Bats waking. The lamps dimmed. Darius whispered, "Back." We obeyed. I did not keep my faith clean in that room. I thought of a hospital hall that smelled like bleach and the water spots on my ceiling that made the same shape every night. The voice pressed those places like a bruise. The second twist came as a fact. Darius said, "These things are not ours. We don't guard them for heaven. We keep them because someone made a bargain long before us. We don't own the house. It owns us." The words landed. Helena paused. Jonas lowered the muzzle. I counted again. The reliquary lid closed by itself. The cold line behind my back moved away like a tide. Chains clicked and settled. We left the crypt. The stair air burned thin in my lungs. In the nave, the pews were both broken and whole. We walked through both. At the door, the tallies were 6. Outside, the wind had stopped and sound carried too far. "Done for tonight," Darius said. Helena wrapped a strip of linen around nothing, hands shaking. Jonas lit a cigarette and held it until it burned his glove. "Still cold," he muttered. The ash drifted sideways where there was no draft. Back at the guest house, Darius opened a small safe and pulled a black book. He wrote the date and told me, "Add what you believe. Not holy." He closed the book. I lay on the bed with my boots on and watched the ceiling. A water stain formed above the cross. The stain was a gate shape. I counted breaths and started again. After 2, a small bell rang once. In the morning, I told Darius I wanted out. He nodded. "The ledger takes all names in time. Put yours down when you are ready to see it written." Then he handed me an old warehouse photograph. In the frame, a row of boxes sat on a shelf. One tag showed a number and 2 words, "Do not." On the edge of the photo, a reflection showed a narrow, shouldered shape with a tilted head, as if listening. I kept the photo. Sometimes I think the tilt has changed. Or maybe that is the way the mind bends when the rules break and the truth arrives late. We do not store holy things. "We store bargains. Each bargain keeps your name. I did not sleep the day we chose to go back. We cleaned guns and checked batteries that would die the same way." Jonas Field stripped his rifle by feel with his eyes closed like a prayer. Helena marked the inside of her wrist with a pencil cross and wiped it away. Darius folded a single page into fourths and slid it into his coat. He told me to carry the light. I said, yes. We drove at dusk. The heater clicked and the van swayed on a road we did not remember. The valley opened like a mouth. Seraphis looked thinner, as if the town bones had been picked clean. The chapel stood like a tooth that would not rot. The tally marks on the stone by the door were 7. The chain was back. Jonas cut it on 2. We stepped in on 3. The air inside had weight I could feel in my teeth. My lamp bowed. The pews were upright and burned at the same time. The altar was draped and bare. The stairs weighted like a throat. We went down hand to shoulder so the count would hold. 1, 2, 3. My breath fogged. Copper hit my tongue. The crypt was not what it had been. The pedestal was cracked and black at the base. The brass bands were gone. The lid stood open to the width of my palm. Inside, red pressure like heat without heat. It rolled the air in slow tides. Darius drew a circle of chalk around the pedestal and made us step outside it. He set candles. Flames leaned toward the box. Helena took out her tools and set them beside her knee. Darius unfolded the page and began to speak. Not a sermon. Just simple words stacked in lines, the way you build a wall in a burning house. He set the terms. Doors stay closed, he said. Windows shut. He spoke the town, the year, our names. He spoke numbers. The chalk at my boot edge warmed. The lid lifted another inch. The pressure rose. My light held. Something stood behind me like a storm beyond a field. My skin prickled. Rule 3, do not look. I stared at the hinge and counted. 1 to 10, 10 to 1. Nails scraped the inside of my skull. I leaned forward as if a hand pressed me there. The candles bent farther until the wicks pointed at the box. They hummed. Helena whispered a line into her sleeve. Jonas breathed through his teeth. Not good, he muttered. Darius sharpened his voice. The pressure pushed back. The box breathed. Dust moved in slow waves and stopped at the chalk. It spoke before it formed. The words landed. Rest, it said. Return. It said my name with a rasp like a hospital vent. 1 day back. Just one. It shaped the 1 day. Kitchen light, a hand's shadow, a lying clock. My heels unlocked. My boot scraped the chalk. Darius did not pause, but I felt the pause rip the room. The same presence rose from the box, now a shape darker than the red. Tall with narrow shoulders, head tilted as if the room had asked it to repeat. It leaned. The smell came in waves, iron and orange. I kept my head down. Jonas fired. Damn it, he hissed. The bullet fell, hammered flat. The hum from the wicks climbed a note. Darius cut his thumb on the paper edge and let the blood fall inside the circle. He gave 5 orders. Hold, close, return, release not. He pressed his left palm to the floor and his right hand toward the box, fingers spread, measuring how far the world could bend. Pressure pushed harder. The lid lifted another inch. The chalk smoked and drew backward in a perfect arc. I tried to answer him like he asked in the van. Present, I said. The words came out thin. The shape tilted further. Something cold ran over my back and under my coat like water along a shelf. I fixed on the hinge. The hinge was a country. The rest was sea. Helena moved. She crawled to the north candle and cupped it with both hands to make the flame stand straight. It did. Her lips moved without sound. The thread of fire thickened and went red. She slid to the east candle and did the same. The circle brightened once. Darius kept speaking through the flame. The pressure sagged under the words we could carry. The lid trembled as if the box remembered a weight that held it down. The shape leaned close at my ear. It did not touch me. It drew a hand through the air at my shoulder and moved it away. In the space it left, grief rose like heat from a road. Not fear, grief. I almost said yes to the 1 day. I could feel the room waiting. Jonas stepped into the circle without meaning to. His boot crossed the chalk and the line broke, and the east candle snapped and went black, and smoke wrote a smudge in the air. "Get out!" I shouted, but it was too late. Pressure surged. The red in the box deepened until it was a shove. Jonas raised the rifle to his cheek and sighted with his eyes squeezed shut. He fired. The casing rang and the sound cut off mid-ring. Darius screamed then. Not fear. Command. His voice hit the stone and the stone hit back. The 4 candles blew outward and then drew inward like lungs. The chalk flared and reformed the ring. The box slammed the lid. Opened it, slammed it again. He stabbed a line with his thumb, blood under a line. Pressure peaked. My knees hit the floor. My teeth clicked. The lid dropped. The red pressure skinned the room and recoiled. Breath left. The candles went still. Smoke rose straight. Silence fell so hard, I heard linen against wood when Helena wrapped the box. She tied the knot with her mouth. Jonas ejected a magazine with shaking hands, and it rang on the stone like a spoon. We backed up the stair on a count. 1, 2, 3. The nave above was ash and whole together. The square had widened. Houses were impressions like giant footprints. The tally marks by the door were 8. Fresh cuts. There was no road, only a flat, dark plain with faint, dry river lines. We walked. The van and the town were gone. The hills were farther. My throat burned. I tasted copper like a coin under the tongue. We walked until light cut the seams of the sky, and then we were at the guest house with the van and frost on the windshield. Darius went straight to the black book. He wrote until his hand shook too much to hold the pen. Helena washed her palms until the skin went raw. Jonas smoked 3 and broke the rest and dropped them in the sink. I sat on my bed and watched the crucifix. It stayed. I stared until my eyes watered and the cross doubled, and the 2 crosses did not agree. He did not make a speech. "We are finished," he said. "Sleep." Yeah. In the morning we found him on his back with his hands folded and his face calm, like a photograph with motion removed. Helena kissed his forehead and left. Jonas was gone by noon. I packed my bag, put the photograph in the inside pocket, and walked out the same door we had used every day. No one stopped me. After, sound came wrong. Footsteps arrived early. Doors thumped closed in rooms I was not in. In a cracked roofed church, a candle leaned toward an empty pew as if to listen. In a motel in Naples, the ice in the glass rang like a bell, and I did not drink. I called no one. I wrote nothing. I carry the guilt the way a man carries a small stone in his mouth to keep from speaking. It rides under the tongue, heavy. It makes everything taste like metal. I know we did not stop anything. We delayed it. We put a board over a well and called it done. It was not. The board kept children from falling for a while. That is all. Aftermath is cold and air you cannot taste. It stays after engines cool and candles go to thread and ash sits. It stays when the crucifix refuses to move. It stays when the wood remembers your hand. It stays when a bell rings once with no rope and you are the only one who hear it. I am alive. That is the aftermath. Alive with the weight of names in a ledger I never signed. Alive with the memory of a lid that learned my breath and tried to match it. Alive with nails on glass before I sleep. Alive with the smell of iron and orange that makes no sense in a kitchen at dawn. This is what I confess, not for forgiveness, for record only, for the breath it takes to put words on the air and hear them exist without music. Because silence is worse than what answers. The recorder clicks when I touch it. I let it run. I breathe once and hear it echo off the cheap walls. There's a window open a thumb. Cold air drifts in and smells like wet metal. I keep the curtains shut. I speak into the room because a wall will hold a confession better than a face. I left the unit. They let me walk. No debrief. No threats, a suitcase, a coat, a key to a room that will not remember me when I'm gone. I sit against the headboard and count breaths. 10 in, 10 out. The cross above the bed in this new room is straight. I try not to stare. It's different from the one in the guest house, but I don't trust it anymore. I keep the photograph in my pocket. It warms against the skin and then cools. Sometimes I think the reflection has moved a degree. Then I tell myself, it's just my hand. I put the photo down on the table and slide it back into the coat like a ritual I'm trying to forget while I do it. The rules still live in my head. They've changed shape. They're not doors anymore. They're fences I carry. I don't read the walls. I don't touch the relic. I don't look. I leave before the third bell. New rule: I do not return calls from numbers I don't know. Another rule: I keep the lamps on, even when I sleep. At night the building sighs, pipes knock, a lift cable slides and groans, somewhere a glass sings and stops. I sleep in boots. Dreams come like old film, grainy faces, a mouth that moves without sound, a square where dust breathes. When I wake, my tongue tastes like a coin. I wipe the window with my palm and leave no mark. Jonas called once from a borrowed phone. He said only, "Don't look behind you." He hung up. 2 days later, I saw his name in a local report from far away. A boat missing from a small harbor. No foul play suspected. It didn't surprise me. He had already stepped past the line once. I read it twice and put the paper in the trash. I took it back out and folded it for the pocket where the photo lives. Helena sent a postcard without words. A drawing of a chapel roofline, but wrong by a degree, like it had turned while the hand watched. The postage mark was smudged. I stared at the picture until my eyes watered. Then I turned it over and muttered, "Safer," before staring at the blank side. I keep it under the glass on the nightstand. The edges curl. I still hear the bell. Not a tower, not a clock. One note, metal that remembers the last hand that touched it. It rings from the next room. It rings in the steam pipe. It rings under my ribs. "Stop," I mutter sometimes, but it never does. When it stops, the room feels lighter for a second, and then too light, like the floor has turned to air and the bed to a board. And I'm the nail holding it down. Yesterday, the cross above the bed turned a half-inch. Not upside down, not a joke. Just that slow drift objects do when the world tilts. I set it straight and pressed the nail deeper. I wrote the time down on a slip of paper and tucked it into the frame. The paper fell out in the night. I did not pick it up until morning. I'm not preaching. I'm not warning anyone. I'm not asking for belief. I'm making a record, one breath at a time, because memory shifts like light and I need something nailed to the wood. There was a room that breathed, I say to the wall. There was a box that learned my breath. There were rules that held just long enough. There was a man who screamed one word and made stone remember what to do. There were 3 of us who walked out. People ask quiet questions without knowing they're asking. A clerk holds a receipt too long. A neighbor taps a wall and listens. A bus driver looks in the mirror and then looks longer. They feel the tilt, but can't name it. I do not name it for them. I say, "Rough day?" and smile without teeth. I pay cash. I walk at dawn when the streets are washed. Bakeries are warm and the glass fogs. Men lift the gate on a corner shop. Women shake crumbs from a tablecloth, and the fabric snaps. I listen for the bell and count to 3. When nothing comes, I whisper, "Keep walking." Sometimes I pass a church and step inside and sit in the back row. The air's colder near the doors. The smell is old wood and wax and stone that holds winter. I don't kneel. I don't say the words. I let my hands hang from my knees and I breathe. A man sweeps near the altar. The broom whispers over tile. A red light glows above the tabernacle like a coal. I don't stare at it. I look at the floor where the stone has been polished by knees that still believe. There are days when hope is a thing you can touch. It's small. It lives in the space right under the breastbone, a warm coin you forget you're carrying until your hand slips into your coat, and there it is. Other days, hope is a sound behind a wall that you're not allowed to open. I take the coin when I can get it. I feed it with little things: a cup washed clean, a chair pushed in, a light turned off with a finger and turned on again. Yesterday I woke before dawn to the smell of orange in a room that had no fruit. I stood very still. The air tasted like a battery on the tongue. The window glass ticked once, then again, as if something outside had leaned to listen and then leaned back. I whispered, "Not now," and counted to 10 twice. When I turned the lamp up, nothing changed except the light. It's still the same photo Darius gave me, the warehouse and the reflection. At noon, I took the photo to a shop that makes copies. The clerk put it under the glass. He pressed the lid down with both hands. The machine hummed. The copy came out lighter than the original. The reflection on the glass had blurred to a smear. I almost breathed easier. I paid. The clerk handed the original back, and I saw the tilt had changed again, or maybe I was shaking. I put both in the coat and left without looking at the door to see if it would close by itself. I'm not going back to Seraphis. The map lost it anyway. The valley won't remember the road. There is nothing there we can take that won't take a name in trade. The ledger writes in a calm hand and doesn't scratch out lines. I saw that book. I saw the ink. I don't need to read it again to believe the total. I do not think God is absent from this. I can't say more than that. Grace stands where it can, I tell myself, like a guard holding a door in a storm. I think goodness is the hand that pulled my shoulder back in that room, even if the hand belonged to a man who's gone now. I think mercy is a thin breath that keeps showing up in cold rooms. I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. If you're waiting for a neat ending, I can't give it. If you need the monster to vanish or the house to burn down or the bell to stop ringing, I can't help you. It's not a movie. It's a hallway you learn to walk every day. I tell myself, each step is the first step. The floor will hold. Most days it does. Tonight I'll leave the recorder running when I fall asleep. I'll turn the lamp low. I'll put the photo under the glass again. I'll set the chair against the door, even though I know it won't matter if it wants in. I'll keep the cross straight and not stare. If the bell rings, I'll count to 3 and breathe. I believe some good remains. Not loud, not proof. A thin line you can find in the dark if you trace the wall with your fingers. If you lose it, you stop and breathe and find it again. A man can live like that. It's not much. It's enough on a good day. And if you're hearing this, it means I press the red button and let my voice leave the room. It means the wall is doing the listening I can't do anymore. It means the record is out there, and I'm somewhere else, trying to walk the hallway with the lights off and my hands open. I don't know what's waiting for me now, but I know this much. I whispered it once and I'll say it again. It isn't over.
It's not over. The seal will break again.